Good afternoon, folks. This is Robinder Sachdev, and welcome to the Hangout Hour or the Panel Hour, actually, which would be reflecting upon and analyzing the discussion, or rather the debate, which was yesterday or last night, the vice presidential debate, the one and only debate between candidates Mike Pence and Kamala Harris. It was, of course, a very interesting debate, and in these very interesting, extra special circumstances that we've had during this presidential cycle of 2020. Now, for with me today for the next 1 hour, we will be having a set of excellent minds who are participatory and experts in American democracy with their own perspectives and whichever school of thought maybe they subscribe to more, be it the Democrat side, be it Republican, be it independents, or whichever perspectives. So what we hope is that our viewers or listeners of this panel hour would have a fair or a decent or an interesting understanding as to how, let's say, how what is the perception coming out of last night's debate. Now, without much ado, I would welcome to the studio with me our colleagues who will be joining me for this wonderful discussion. And please do remember, folks, do put in your comments and questions. This is Facebook Live right now. Put in your questions and comments, and we'll try to take up your questions. And I'll get the guests to answer or throw their perspectives on what the questions that you are putting out. And I hope that it'll be an interesting hour. So let me welcome with us in the studio Mr. Steve Rao, Mr. Sam Shim, and also Mr. Adi Sati. Welcome, folks, to the panel hour. Hi, Adi.
Hey,
Uh, Dave. Hello, Sam.
Morning.
We will be having a discussion as the topic is fair enough. How was the debate last night, and what is your view, each one of us? And we'll have different opinions, and we will also be welcoming questions and comments coming in from the viewers who will be typing in. Much welcome, viewers. Anyone who's watching by, coming by, please, stop by to say hello, to put in your thought, what you think, or pop a question to Steve or Sam or Adi, and I'm sure they'll be glad to, offer their perspective, their insights about the discussion which is out there. Now, let me, of course, introduce also, or rather, I'll let them introduce also, and we have, uh, monikers which will describe each one of them. Let me start with Mr. Sati. Adi is a Republican strategist and a public policy professional from Michigan. Sam Chim, joining us, is the RP, the Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus Chair of the Ohio Democratic Party. Steve, Councilman Steve Rao, in his third term now, is a Democrat leader from the state of North Carolina. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Now, may I invite, let's say, opening thoughts? Okay, last night was an interesting debate. And as I was thinking the topic of today, I thought, what would it be like to be a fly on the wall in a presidential or a VP debate? Okay, so let's say, starting with Steve, what are your opening comments? How do you think the debate went? Do you see any clear winner or loser? So, an opening wrap up of your initial reactions. We'll do one round each with our distinguished guest, and then we'll get into further discussions. So, Steve, your
Well,
take. How was the debate yesterday?
well, first of all, let me just thank you for hosting this, and it's a pleasure to share this hour with Sam and Adi. And I bring you greetings from the Tar Heel State, North Carolina, which is a swing state. That's why I'm wearing my purple today. We're going to talk about that. And I live in Morrisville, which has actually been ranked the number 10th most livable city in the United States to live in by Money Magazine. So I had to get that out there for my town. But first of all, I think that this was for anyone watching this debate, regardless of what party we're from, to be an Indian American and to have my daughter or my children watch the first time in history an Indian woman, an American woman, and a black woman uh, be presidential, and she came across as someone who could be president. So I think this was a game changing event for all of us as a community. And I really was impressed with the way she handled herself. In terms of who won or lost, I think it's always hard to analyze those in these debates. But I do think that in this case, I think the Senator Harris Uh, One, a little bit more in terms of her argument of poor performance by the Trump administration in the pandemic, where he started out with very important facts about the 205,000 deaths, the lack of contact tracing. Pence did eloquently defend the conservative position. He plays poker very well. So I think his calm demeanor served him well in the debate. He even had a fly on his head and he didn't move. And so, I mean, it makes you think the state of American politics when a fly is the headline of the story. But, um, but I think from the pandemic, I think talking about justice, talking about healthcare, talking about working family opportunities, I think Kamala Harris did a better job painting a picture of why um, Joe Biden should be given the chance to lead this country. I think with Pence, when I walked away from the debate, I said that he did and said all the right things, but I don't think he really made a strong case of why Trump should be reelected for a second term because we're not as healthy, we're sicker, economy, 38 million unemployed. Of course, it's not all their fault, but it is where it is. So I would squeak it out. I'd say Kamala Harris a slight edge in this performance tonight, last night.
Thank you so much, Steve. Definitely so. I think the opening comments, and then we'll get into some policy issues. Also, of course, bottom line is that, what are the policy issues? And also, did it reconfirm the basis? Of course, re-energize the base. Probably that's one objective of these debates also. At the same time, reach out to the undecideds. So let me now invite thoughts from Adi. Adi is a Republican strategist, folks, listeners, viewers, based out of Michigan and a public policy professional. Adi, what are your opening thoughts and comments? How the debate went yesterday? Anything which came top of your mind when you were watching the debate?
Well, I also want to say thank you so much for having me. I always appreciate being on and having an opportunity to discuss this. I am currently in Michigan right now on the ground, seeing what's happening in a battleground state. I'm originally from here. I grew up here. So it's exciting to see my state be the topic of discussion many times over during this election. The same way that North Carolina was mentioned, I'm proud of my state of Michigan. I've worked in politics for a long time now. So I used to work at the Republican National Committee headquarters, where I was the National Director of Asian Pacific American Engagement. Prior to that, I worked for Senator Orrin Hatch. So my perspective is a bit national, but also specific to my home state as well. And so here in Michigan, we're seeing a lot of people that are re-energized by last night's discussion, as you mentioned. The base is very excited. I think that was mentioned already, but Vice President Pence, since he was in Congress, has always had that kind of a demeanor about himself where he is very calm, he's very poised. He won't even let a fly bother him, as was mentioned. So that's something that I think is very notable, very different kind of persona that we might see compared to the presidential elections. And I think that's a great thing because when you see the way that somebody like him carries himself, somebody who is a poised political leader, somebody who has conservative values and stands by them, and has been doing so since he was in Congress and then as a governor and now as vice president. People are looking at him and they're happy in the base, but even in general. I mean, I think that they talk about a lot of different issues, but I would say that Vice President Pence did a great job of articulating, and he always does do that. So that's kind of my initial takeaway watching that. I think that in this case, the vice presidential debate is something that people have paid attention to more so than they might have in previous presidential elections, just because I think that when it comes to the conversations around the presidential nominee on the Democratic side, Joe Biden, a lot of people are talking about the fact that Kamala Harris may end up potentially being the president down the road, especially because he may only do one term. There's a lot of conversations like this that are happening. I'm sure that Steve might want to weigh in on that. Maybe Sam will too. But I think that that's very interesting. It's a very interesting topic conversation. And so people are paying attention to this vice presidential debate more so than they have in the past in different years, I would say.
No, very much so, very much so. Uh, Thank you so much for your, thoughts. And I think what you bring up, yeah, that would be a question. We'll go deeper into it. Both Steve mentioned and you also refer to it that, this time around the VP candidate has assumed a different persona overall. Given one, of course, that Kamala Harris is the first woman of color to be, a candidate. And then secondly, given the extra special circumstances, which, due to the COVID corona crisis have shown up. And then thirdly, due to Biden's age as compared to Trump's age. So a bunch of these factors have rolled into making the vice presidential pick much more, coming under much more the microscope. Thank you so much, Adi, for your thoughts. Now, may I invite Sam? Sam, it seems you're on mute. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, Sam,
Yes.
yeah, if you could, we welcome your opening thoughts. And as I mentioned in the opening comment, Sam is the API, the Asian American Pacific Islander caucus chair of the Democratic Party in Ohio. So, Sam, what are your thoughts, please? And what are your takeaways, which you would like to share with the viewers, listeners?
Well, first, I wanted to thank you, Robinder, and then it's good to have Adi and Steve on this call today. It's wonderful for us to talk after the VP debate. I think the American people overall are very happy, regardless of where they're leaning, because this was a debate where both candidates were able to get their messages out. A week before, it felt like it was more of a shouting match, and it was nice to be able to hear the messages and have our candidates articulate their positions very well. I think for many of us, this election is really about two main issues. One of the issues is the handling of the pandemic. And I think it was showcased clearly, the events going on and the statements by both candidates, where they stand on their beliefs regarding COVID-19. I also think it's unfortunately become, to some degree, a proxy on racism. And we see some of the attacks on immigrant communities, and it was alluded to, especially with some of the negative tone regarding immigration and regarding China, for example. It's often used as a proxy for all immigrants. And I think those are the two factors that are really going to come into play. In many states, even such as Ohio, we've already started early voting. So to some degree, the election day has already happened. And I think this really helps cement the decisions for most people on who they're going to vote for. I think in the end, they both did a good job articulating their message, but I felt that Kamala Harris connected more with me. I mean, I think for a lot of us, especially in old world families or immigrant families, we look at, or even African American families, we look at Kamala Harris and we kind of see her like she's a little bit like our mom, or she's a little bit like our auntie, and we can connect with her. And I think that's still very important, because we need people in leadership that look like us and that think like us, and their American experience growing up in America and as adults, it's more like our American experience rather than the experience of others. There's a lot of people in the country, and a lot of us Asian Americans that we want to have people that look more like us in office. And we are very excited. They say, regardless of which side a candidate is on, when there's a South Asian or Asian American candidate running for office, it energizes people, and there's a much greater turnout amongst our communities.
Thank you so much, Sam, for an interesting point. You mentioned about that, someone looking like oneself in a sense, and that people look at her like a mama. There are lots of memes going around nowadays, right? Both sides of the aisle. I think one of those which I saw today was that a mama look that she was giving yesterday. So maybe, different people will take it different ways. For the benefit of our viewers, the US India Political Action Committee and the Imagindia Institute welcome you to please join in, put in your comments. We'll take your comments through the questions, which I'll toss to our fantastic panel that we have here. And by the way, US Impact is a bipartisan platform. We welcome all ideas, all thoughts, and our objective, our mission is to kind of energize, get more people engaged, and also we can spread the message so that there is more participation in public life by people of the Indian American community, and also, of course, mainstream. Anyway, a solid democratic process. Now, with that, may I welcome our another eminent panelist who's joined us, Mr. Bharat Mehta. Barry, welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Hello,
Thank
Barry.
you.
Can you hear us? Welcome.
Yeah,
Barry,
I
for the
can hear you
benefit
loud
of
and
our
clear.
viewers, great. You just joined. Barry, for the benefit of our viewers, is a leader of the Indian American community from the state of Maryland. And we are very happy, extremely glad to have him on the panel with us. Barry, we were just going through the first round of views of each of the panelists, starting with Steve and then Adi and then uh, Sam Shim, about what their takeaway or what their perspective view was from the debate of yesterday. What are your initial thoughts? Any clear winners or losers, you think? Anything which stood out in your mind, which you found exceptionally interesting, which you would like to share with the viewers and with the panel? Over to you, Barry.
Sure. Sure. I had an invite to support and join Kamala Harris campaign about a year ago, um, when she was the presidential candidate. Before she became the VP pick by Joe Biden. And I
Mm-hmm.
did contribute to her campaign, and I did have a chance to speak with some of not her personally, but some of her senior people. And I was all excited about it in terms of that she's a person of Indian origin, and as the gentleman said a few minutes ago, that she looks like us, so that we would like to see somebody in a powerful position that looks like us. But afterwards, I sort of got disillusioned because the the whole theme of the campaign at that time, and as a presidential candidate, by the way, was that let us fight the system, let us fight for this, let us fight for that. And I asked them a question like, "Who are you fighting?" And it sort of came across like they're fighting the rich. Now, I have been fairly successful land developer in Maryland, and I'm very proud of it. And the more I talked with them, the more it became clear that I was the target for their fight, that I was the guy in the crosshairs, because they wanted to they were viewing the successful people as if we got to where we are by exploiting the little person. So their theme was, hey, do you support the $15 an hour minimum wage? And I said that no, I don't. To me, it depends on the skill. If you're $15 an hour, you should get $15 an hour. But if you're just cleaning toilets or something, then no, I don't believe that it should be forced as a minimum wage. And so that's where I sort of parted ways with the Kamala Harris campaign, primarily because I feel that the Asian American community, Indian American, Chinese American, we are probably more hardworking than the average American. I'm gonna kind of, maybe put my foot in my mouth, but make that statement. And in a higher economic strata, more successful than an average American. And to me, when we are in a higher income, higher wealth bracket, uh, I want a candidate that does not want to attack my success, my wealth, my income, and that's where I'm troubled with Kamala Harris as a VP candidate. Even though Joe Biden has made statement that anybody making under $4,000 should not have to worry. I'm frankly making more than that, so I am worried that I am their target. So that's my main concern. I feel like the social issues like gun control, even the COVID response, I support Joe Biden's campaign and Kamala Harris for that. But just the economic side, to 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 take a socialistic type of approach, to take the Robin Hood kind of approach, where to take the money from the rich and spread it to the poor, whether they deserve it or not. I'm troubled with that concept.
Sure. Thank you so much, Barry. I mean,
Thank
that's a
you.
wonderful point you made out. I think, and that's what leads us now into maybe not a debate between us, but maybe we get some meat of the matter to kind of discuss through. And also, once again, I remind our viewers who are watching by, coming by, please do pop in your questions, and I'll try to take those questions with either of our esteemed panelists, Steve, Sam, Barry, and Adi. Now, what Barry was saying just now, that the economic message of, I'm sorry.
Is your physical view? Sangeeta?
Okay.
Physical view, then
So,
you can have some
so point about the tax and the tax cuts or the taxation. Coming to you, Steve. Now we are moving into the second round, so we'll again go Steve, Sam, Adi, and Barry, right? And we are also waiting for Tony, who is from California. Now, Steve, do you think Kamala Harris was able to convey or to counter the perception which Barry is putting out, that that particular point of taxation, that taxing the rich, or there'll be more taxes, or the Biden administration take away any tax benefits?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to thank Barry Mehta. I want to thank Barry Mehta for his response, and it sounded a lot like my own father and other Indian American leaders I see here in North Carolina, who tend to be more socially moderate but more fiscally conservative. And I do appreciate, as a son of immigrants from India, can truly value hard work. And I think that I'm not an expert on tax policy, but I do think that I don't. I think that Senator Harris and Vice President Biden still haven't done, in my opinion, a good enough job talking about how their tax plan would stimulate economic growth and create new jobs, not only filling jobs that we're losing in America and all around the world, but how are we going to create new entrepreneurial jobs? John Chambers, who's a family friend of mine, a few weeks ago, former CEO of Cisco, he's a Padma Shri winner. I hosted an event in North Carolina with him, and he said that we're going to create 15 million new jobs in the next decade to offset the 40% of automation. And so I think Senator Harris did a good job of talking about working families needing help. I mean, we don't want to steal from the rich and give to the poor, but what we do want to do is provide opportunities for those who don't have resources to be able to go to college, to get an education, to be able to have health care. And if you repeal Obamacare and you put pre-existing conditions back in there, and people aren't working and they have less money to pay the bill, then how are they going to be able to even go to college or educate themselves or go to community colleges to transition to the new jobs and new economy? So, that's sort of my take in terms of a tax policy, is that I think that, Senator Harris did a good job of talking about working families. But, as I look at our own community, I'll just close out with how interesting the Indian community is, because, in North Carolina, we're a swing state. So that means that's why I'm wearing purple today. Out of the 7.1 million voters, 42% are independent. You know how many that was in 2016? 31%. Democrats are 29%. Republicans are around 28%. So the party affiliation is going down, and you have independents that might be like Mr. Mehta. They are a little bit more fiscally conservative, socially moderate. And so I think that's the challenge for each presidential campaign right now, is you have these what we call swing voters, and we'll know on election day, are they going to vote for the economy? Are they going to vote for better handling of the pandemic? Or are they going to vote for better and more healthcare? So these are all issues I think that we have. But to answer your question, I think Senator Harris did a good job, but I don't necessarily think that a $4 trillion tax cut has ever been shown to stimulate economic growth. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge as we close out the last 3.5 weeks of this campaign. But people like Mr. Mehta, I see all the time in Morrisville, North Carolina, and we might talk about. We haven't talked about immigration. I definitely want to talk about that today, because I think that's an important policy that I'm seeing really impact North Carolina, with probably over 40,000 on H-1B visas that are being told to go back to India, and they can't live in North Carolina anymore. And these are people that are producing. They want to work hard. They want to make money, and they're producing $20 billion for our economy. And we have a president that's saying, we don't want you here. Go back. We're going to save American jobs. So anyway, we can come back to that later.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. I mean, actually, my question to you would be maybe subsequently would be that fair enough. That's the point. But to what extent do you think that Senator Harris succeeded yesterday in getting this message out to the undecideds and to those who are still to make up their minds? Right. I think that would be a core question
I,
as to yesterday's debate.
I think because of her performance and demeanor, and I think she did a good job making an argument to those swing voters that they were the team that could bring our country back on track, to get the train back on track, where we're not responding to tweets every other day, but we have a president who can build good coalitions around the world, can take this pandemic seriously, and get the American country back on track. Didn't seem so much focus on the economic strategy, the details of how that specific job creation. So from that perspective, I think she lost a little bit of an opportunity to talk about that more. Um, and you know,
Okay.
so either party's playing to the base
Mhm.
still.
Sure.
I don't think they're doing as good of a job playing to those swing voters that we're talking about right now.
Thank you. You know what? I realized that maybe the sequence, with your permissions and liberty of my esteemed panel, I'll little bit change the order because I think we've had Kamala Harris point from Steve, and if I go to Sam again, it'll be the pros and the strengths and where she won or scored. Rather, let's kind of have a change of the scenario. So let's have Adi. So Adi, what is your take? How was it yesterday? And I mean, to counter the points that let's say Steve is making, or to counter the points that Barry is making, or to support what Barry is saying, that he's concerned with the matters of the taxation, right? That the tax cuts would be taken away. Do you think that Mike Pence yesterday was able to score some points within the debate, but much rather, I mean, the measure is once again the points of the undecided one, and second, maybe energizing more the base. So, did Pence succeed in countering some of those, points which Steve is putting out?
Well, I think so. And Steve makes a lot of great points. I think that he is very much looking at it from a broad perspective. When we go to address the conversation that Barry was talking about earlier, I do think that a lot of people are thinking about the economy. And in fact, it goes to show in many elections that always tends to be the number one issue. People care about job creation. People care about if they can have a job. And so far, I think the Trump Pence administration has done a great job of building the economy pre-COVID, and what they want to do is build it back up again. And so that's the message that we're hearing from the Republican Party, and a lot of folks, especially within the Indian American community, since that's what we're addressing also in the process of talking about U.S. impact. There are a lot of people in the Indian American community, I think, that may not resonate as much with the Kamala Harris brand as sometimes it tends to be portrayed in the media. A lot of Republicans and people in general in the Indian American community don't feel that same sense of connection that a lot of people I think do. Maybe she has the look. There's no doubt about that. You can't dispute her ethnic background. There's no doubt about that either. What I'm saying is that I think a lot of people view her as somebody that is conveniently Indian American when she needs to be, especially when there's a fundraising event of some sort that's available. It sounds like Barry has also experienced that and has since maybe shifted his views in that. But nonetheless, I think that the economy is an important component of conversation. I think Vice President Pence did a good job of addressing that. I think the Pence background, the Trump Pence administration and Vice President Pence's background has very much been geared and shifted towards focusing on the economy. I think that that's what people want to see rebuild, and they're going to want to vote for the person that's going to want to build it the best.
What about the argument and the point and the views and the reality maybe with regards to handling the COVID pandemic? On that count, did you see in the debate that Mike Pence was able to put up a good point out or a defense or articulate that what the administration has done has been the best which could have been done by any leader, irrespective of any tension?
Vice President Pence did a good job of addressing that as well. I believe that. I think that when we look at what happened in this last year, since January, February, March, and beyond, A lot of uncertainty has been created. A lot of things have happened to be able to create a safe environment for people. The president himself, as we all know, was tested positive for COVID. He went and dealt with that and was able to come back and be a healthy person that continued to move forward. The folks on the Pence camp were also very safe and cautious. But when it comes to dealing with the American people in that, I do think that there has been a lot of movement and progress in the right direction. And right now we are working on a vaccine that I know that the president and the vice president are getting behind, and that could happen any time in the near future. When you have something like COVID-19, something very unexpected like that, or other pandemics that we've dealt with in the past, it's one of those situations where everything is on the go. I mean, you're learning and growing and moving and making decisions as you go along that route. And many countries are looking to the United States for what they're doing and the decisions that they made. And I think that a lot of what the president has done to make sure that this pandemic has been as safe as possible has been very positive. And one of the things that he does talk about is that he wants to rebuild the economy. And right now we need to be able to make sure we're safely opening different jobs and environments where people can work so that we can continue to start doing that. And I think that that's something that they focused on.
Thank you so much, Adi. Definitely, you are you articulating the point, and that is the tussle which is out there in this battle of ideas out there. At this point, before I invite Sam for his comment on this round, may I also welcome another very active and prominent Indian American personality, leader of the Indian American community, Dolly Kapoor from California. Hi, Dolly. Good morning and welcome to the US India Political Action Committee and Imagine India, the panel hour. Thanks for joining.
Morning, Robinder, and thank you for having me here. Nice to meet all the panelists. Wonderful to see you guys. I can hear we are having a very healthy debate here. So wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome, Dolly. Yes, of course, we have Steve Rao, we have Sam Shim, we have Bharat Barry Mehta, we have Adi Sathi, and of course, Dolly. And thanks to your efforts in bringing, I think, everyone together and making this happen also. So, thank you very much for your leadership in bringing, folks together for a conversation. Now we'll continue and then I'll come for your observations of last night's debate. May I invite Sam for his comments on the issues which are coming out. It seems one is the economy versus the social. That is one area, right? Another is administration response of the COVID scenario. Now, on all three of these, you've heard, views of Barry, you heard the views of Adi, and of course, you heard the views of Steve. How would you synthesize? And once again, my point is that, yeah, sure, we have our own views, but I'm trying to draw out your mind towards some empathy in the sense that what do you think the viewers took away as the message, right? Again, the undecided, the confirmed base, were they more energized, the undecided and the undecided states also, or, the swing states with these questions. So your thoughts, please.
So I want to start with a quote. A rising tide raises all boats. And I think that's very important. As we talk about the economy, I think what Barry and others have articulated is very correct. The Indian American community and the overall Asian American community in general, we are the wealthiest socioeconomic group in the country. We've done very well, which is amazing considering many of us are first and second generation immigrants. But the thing that's very important is we want to continue. We need a strong economy to continue our success. And we know the economy is not doing well right now. We know there's major problems with the economy. If you look at Goldman Sachs, they said that Joe Biden as president will help the economy more. If we can help the economy overall, this will help all of us, whether we are wealthy or middle class. And I think that's very important. So many business leaders have backed Joe Biden, and that's another very important fact. And one of the things we don't talk about in the Indian American and Asian American community is this disparity. when you disaggregate the data, we have a lot of success stories, but unfortunately, for many of us, we have families, we have extended family that's struggling, and we want to make sure that everyone, all of our family and friends, are part of the American success story. And I think that's what Kamala Harris is providing an opportunity, because there are a lot of Asian Americans and Indian Americans that live at or close to the poverty line. And we want to make sure that every one of us is able to enjoy the successes of life. Just because you're hardworking does not guarantee wealth. And we want to make sure every hardworking Indian American has adequate health care. We want to make sure that regardless of whether your family makes $500,000 a year or $50,000 a year, that college is affordable for all of our children. I mean, education is so important to us, and many of us are worried that colleges are becoming unattainable, or it's going to be a major struggle for families to afford an education. And we want to keep opening these doors, because if these doors close, it's going to impact our communities. And I think Kamala Harris, articulated her points well. I think it's definitely showing the disparity between the rich and not so rich. And it is a challenge in our communities, because we have a lot of hardworking, successful Indian Americans, and we don't want to stifle that success. Those are our success stories. Those are the stories that people talk about in our families and in gatherings, and we want to encourage that. But we need to find a way where we don't leave large groups of our extended family and of our friends behind for those successes. Regarding the pandemic, I think it was very clear looking at Pence's response, and you can tell both Kamala Harris and Pence, they tried to stay on message, and they both did a good job. But if you listen to Pence, his talking points, you can see that the pandemic is not something that they realized was going to be as a big of a problem as it turned out to be. And the refusal to wear masks and the hosting a super spreader event is quite shocking to the American community. I can speak from experience. My father died of COVID-19 back in May. I mean, he is one of the victims. When you talk about 5,000 Americans who died, that's a number. But when it directly impacts your family, and many of us have our elderly, we have elderly parents and grandparents, we're really worried about them. I had to, my father passed away, and we could not have a funeral service. We could not be by his side at the burial. We had a wake that was limited to 10 people. No one should have to bury someone during the pandemic. It is a horrible experience. The final funeral service is a way for us to pay tribute to our elders, and to be deprived of that is extremely painful for my family. And the pandemic response has really hit home to so many of us, especially Asian Americans and Indian Americans, because we have tight-knit, multi-generational families, and we still, our elders talk to our children. We're very close-knit, and we don't want to lose any member of our family. And I think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's approach to this would have been very different and would have saved countless lives.
Thank you so much, Sam. And, of course, my personal condolences and, prayers and thoughts with you and your family. And I'm sure all of our colleagues on this panel would absolutely join me and convey such. Losing a parent is a life changer, game changer. And yes, Barry, just a moment, please. Yeah. And especially in these circumstances, to go through that would be quite traumatic. I can be really not much, but somewhat empathize with you. I was planning to actually go to Dolly, but Dolly, with your permission, it seems Barry would like to make a point. So then, Barry, if you would like to, a quick observation, and then we'll take Dolly's opening comments. Over to you, sir. You're on mute, Barry. You're on mute. If you could kindly unmute yourself.
very effective point about losing his father, and we're all sad about that. But I believe that it's speculation, it's pure speculation to believe that there would have been less people lost if Joe Biden was the president or Joe Biden was handling the crisis. A crisis like this is a very difficult thing, and to automatically assume that the alternative would have done a better job is not necessarily true conclusion. The other thing that I heard is that the typical Democratic thing, like everybody wants better health care, better jobs, uh, more money, and stuff like that. Yes, but I believe that Trump has done excellent job in terms of the our pocketbook, in terms of the economy. And the way I was when the market started going down in February after the pandemic started, I was worried that this was going to be another 2008, the crash. But it turned out that the impact was much less, and the market came right back up roaring. The economy came back roaring in terms of the number of jobs. I don't believe the Democratic administration would have added even half as many new jobs as Trump has done. I don't believe that the market would have been good. As a matter of fact, as soon as about 30 days ago, the the polls started coming out that Biden was leading Trump, the stock market started going down. So that tells you the perception of an average investor who is afraid of the Democratic uh, control, the Democratic presidency. The
Thank
market, I mean, you can use almost to the date, you can track the market going down in the last 30 days to the polls where we're coming out in favor of the Democrats. So I think that all the motherhood stuff is fine that Sam has said, but there is no guarantee that the Democrats are going to do any better job of providing more jobs, providing more wealth. I think the last 4 years, until the pandemic hit us this year, have done an excellent job. Also, standing up against the Chinese, I don't think that the Democrats had the guts until now to stand up against the Chinese, where our the balance of payment has been a huge problem for the last 10 years, and Obama didn't do anything about it, didn't do much about it. The deficit kept on growing and growing, and Trump is the first one that took a firm stand against the Chinese. So I think that the case is strong. I do blame Trump and Pence both in terms of their handling of the pandemic. Frankly, I don't think they've done a good job. They've not set a good example by not wearing masks and all of that. I don't know what was the point in this kind of a macho attitude, like nothing bothers me, and then he gets COVID himself. So I think in that point, uh, Trump did a lousy job, frankly, yes. But the economy wise, he has done a far better job.
Thank you so much, Barry. I think what maybe seems what you're saying, and several panelists also are saying, it seems that on economy maybe there can be a toss-up, or yes, as you're saying, or there's a perception among the large number that on economy Trump would have has done better than Biden administration would have done. Having said that, may I now invite Dolly? Dolly Kapoor, as we mentioned, for the benefit of viewers, is a leader of the Indian American community in California, and she's been very actively involved in the grassroots for I think last 20 odd years plus. So, Dolly, what are your thoughts? And you're coming from the state of Senator Harris. Okay, so what are your thoughts of how the debate of yesterday played out? What it seems from this discussion, which is happening right now, that on economy, okay, first the debate, the impact of the debate. I think we've gotten more into the issues and the policies, as Barry and earlier Sam were talking of both campaigns. Sure, those are points. But one with respect to the debate of yesterday, any interesting takeaways for you? What you think would have, struck a chord with the base, energized the base of either, or would have helped the undecided to decide a little bit? What are your views on this, please?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for your kind words. And Sam, sorry to hear about your dad. I know it's very hard time and very testing times. Uh, it is definitely not good to hear anytime somebody who's not even going to be able to pay respect to their dear ones. Having said that, Robinder, moving right into, because I know you guys are deep into the conversation, I don't want to take anything away from there, but just few thoughts on the debate. Pretty standard, very standard, fair debate. I think it did not really matter much, honestly. Personally, this is what I think. Both the bases, they just made their bases happy, and I think the bases would be happy. I also think that expected shots were fired. Expected, they did not go out of their way. I think the debate would have mattered if somebody would have goofed up badly in between. But I also think that talking about the, undecided, I don't think so that this really did anything to sway anybody. And it never does, actually. The vice president debates never does. I mean, if you look at the record, I personally enjoyed the dose of civility, where we really did not have to put, hand on our ears, honestly. And my takeaway was, I think the fly took the debate, sitting on Pence's head for 2 minutes, 36 seconds. It was fun to watch, and I think it was the best thing that really was the only fun thing that happened in the debate. So yes, so that really, and I just want to quickly move to Barry's point about the economy, about the situation we are in. I think it is a known fact that the Trump base, really about 45% of Trump base cares about the economy, while 32% of Biden's base cares about COVID. So there is definitely the topmost issue in Biden's base is actually COVID. And on one side, 42% plus is actually economy. So having said that, definitely I think it is important to know who they're pleasing, who they're going after. But also at the same time, Barry, I would like to reiterate that let's not mix the stock market with the economy. The economy and the number of unemployment is definitely, these are two different things. So we are definitely looking at massive numbers of unemployment. Again, I'm just talking numbers. Now, I'm
Sorry, sorry to interrupt you a moment. Sorry, a moment. Adi is mentioning maybe he's having some sound issues listening. Are the other panelists able to listen to Dolly?
Yeah.
I can hear her loud and clear.
Sure, thank you. Thank you.
I can hear her well.
Please, maybe something we'll work out at the back end. Please proceed, Dolly. My apologies for the.
No worries at all. So yeah. I think Pence had a difficult record to defend yesterday. And I think that basically he just went after what what he's been given. So it was a pretty standard fair debate. So I'll let you take over.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dolly. Now let's say I'll come back to Steve. Steve, one interesting thing, and you are a Democrat supporter, right? Am I correct in saying that? Yes.
Yeah, I'm a
Well,
moderate Democrat. I have a lot of Republican supporters too. I've won all three of my elections with about 75% of the vote in my city. So
fair.
it's taken a coalition of Democrats
Sure.
and Republicans. Yeah.
Sure. Now, my question to you, and probably to other panelists also, would be: how would you counter a Republican argument, for whatever reason, that if the Biden-Harris ticket wins, then Harris may be heading for maybe 12 years of in and around the White House, 4 years with Biden, and then after that she again contests and wins. I mean, in one hypothetical scenario. And how much do you think that argument will be used, is being used, can be effective to rally the base against a Biden-Harris candidature?
Well, I think the best thing that they can do, first of all, what I want to say is that, and I think it's important to bring up as we wind down this debate, is that I think that each base of each party and each candidate is either coming from an urban area and rural areas. So there's an urban-rural divide in this country, and I think North Carolina is a battleground state because we're seeing that here. If you look at North Carolina, we have urban areas like Charlotte, Raleigh, Cary, Morrisville, Apex, and then you've got rural areas, right? And so the urban voters view things very differently than the rural voters. So a lot of times these debates, you can say, well, Kamala Harris won with the more urban electorate, but the rural areas that have been hit hard by the economy, they're out of work, 38 million employed, they don't see the economy getting any better. So I think that's the best thing that can rally the Trump base, is to say that you're out of work, you don't have a job, we need to open up faster and quicker. And Kamala Harris is a socialist. She's voted for, we didn't talk about the Supreme Court yet, but just Supreme Court nominees. She's going to uphold Roe v. Wade. Republicans want to overturn it with Amy Coney Barrett. We could spend an hour on that. But the bottom line is that I think that is an argument that they're going to use. I think the hardest thing that they're going to have to prove, and I'm going to respectfully disagree with Mr. Maida, I think that that this election should be based on three basic questions. Are we healthier? Do we feel safer in the world order? And do we stronger economically? And on those three litmus tests, I truly believe, and I'm not even saying this as a Democrat, I believe this president has been an absolute failure for this country. If you look at the economy, for example, yes, the stock markets have been resilient, but, and I will give President Trump credit, unemployment was at 3.5%, the lowest in 50 years. But he says he's created more jobs than Obama. That's simply not true. The data shows that Obama created 7 million new jobs in his last 3 years of office. This president created 6.4 million. On his watch, he knew a pandemic was coming in. The American people didn't know. Taiwan had 25 million cases and 7 deaths. The United States of America, the leader of the free world, a country that sent man to the moon, that is leading in innovation and technology in every area, the home to Google, the home to SAS, the home to Cisco, could not stop a pandemic, which is now India is about to overtake us. 201,000 dead, 204,000 dead, more than the World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War. So he failed from a healthcare perspective. And then the third thing is, do we feel safer? And that's a conversation for another time. But I believe this foreign policy is broken. When you say you're friends with Putin one day and then your enemy the next day, you're fighting China. The trade wars, I think, took manufacturing jobs away from America, and they haven't come back. And so I think, but to come back to your question, the argument I think would work, because at the end of the day, this is politics. People are going to make decisions based on an ad, based on things. So I never really quite thought about that. Honestly, this is the first time on my politics where more can happen in a week than a year. We're like living in light years in this, and I'm in the business. Okay. I mean, I have a U.S. Senator, Cal Cunningham, that was going to tip the balance of the Senate. And now he's in the middle of a sexting scandal, which is becoming an extramarital scandal. And the whole balance of the U.S. Senate could be decided by a text message on a phone. This didn't happen. And I think he'd be a great senator, by the way. I think but that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, so to answer your question, I think that's how I would sum up the argument today. The question is, that's Steve Rao's argument. What are the American people going to decide? But I think it's going to come down to the independents, the unaffiliateds. I think Indians are still leaning more towards Trump, a lot of times because of the Indian foreign policy. I mean, I'm still hearing from on the ground here, people have not forgiven Biden for the statements he made about Kashmir. This is something that's going around the community. And I think the whole U.S.-India foreign policy, I would say many Indian Americans look at the Trump and Modi as, Trump has been an ally of Modi. Yeah. Right. So I had to get a lot in there. I'm sorry. I hope I answered your question, but I tried to sum it up in a debate format of, are we healthier? Are we safer? Are we stronger economically? I think 38 million unemployed. In 1 week in North Carolina, we had 750 unemployment claims. But I'll end with this. Our governor, Roy Cooper, listen to the scientists. He opened up slower, and our positive rate in North Carolina is around 5.8%. That's half of what it is in Georgia and South Carolina. So if you wear your mask, and the president has COVID-19, and he's going back to the White House without a mask, if you're the commander in chief, you need to quarantine yourself for 2 weeks.
Sure, that is the debate out there. Okay, I'll say two things. One, it seems we are having a good discussion. So with the time permission, can we stretch it We are nearing the end of in about 3-4 minutes. Can you stretch it for another 10 minutes beyond the hour? Is that okay with all panelists? Is it good with your time, Adi and Sam? Thank you so much. Now, that being said, I will take the raw argument of saying that what are the chinks in the Democrat campaign which the Trump campaign should exploit. Adi, I'll twist the question to you. What do you think are the some chinks in the Trump campaign which the Democrats can exploit or are exploiting at which would have the maximum impact, perhaps?
Uh, so I just want to start off by saying that I have a lot of respect for Steve. He tries to present the conversation very even keel. Not everybody usually does that, so got to give you credit where credit's due. When I look at some of the topics of discussion, for example, safety, a topic that we haven't even broached really is what's happening in a lot of the cities, especially when it comes to the Black Lives Matter protests that have turned into some looting and rioting and issues with different communities, issues discussing organizations like Antifa, conversations that are being had, and especially with suburban voters, which you really have to focus on right now. That is where the battle is being fought. I'm talking about in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and New Hampshire and other battleground states. There are suburban voters that are looking at safety and security as a serious issue on this election. And they're thinking about what's happening in the cities and the fact that the Democratic Party will not stand behind the police and the law enforcement, and the Republican Party will. And right now, the president has proudly, even in 2016, stated that Blue Lives Matter, and it's something that he wants to continue to fight for. And that is also being showcased in the police unions that are endorsing him. So, from a safety and security standpoint, I think that that's something that people really do care about, and they do feel that Kamala Harris, who has openly donated to certain organizations, for example, in Minnesota, that are continuing to support these organizations that are essentially causing problems in some of these major cities. I mean, that's undeniable. When it comes to protecting us on the foreign front, I think that you can look at the Republicans and say that they have done a great job of building our military and that they have abolished ISIS. And that's something that the president is very proud of. He campaigned on that. Promises made, promises kept. That's something he always talks about. When we talk about the economy, yes, COVID is something that nobody could have expected. But prior to COVID, not only the stock market, but the economy was doing very well. I mentioned earlier that I used to work for Senator Orrin Hatch, senator from Utah, who retired in 2018, but spent 42 years in the Senate. And I still would think that one of his greatest accomplishments came in his last term when he helped deliver the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in 2017. I had the opportunity to work for him right before that all happened. And I think that that did stimulate the economy in many ways. We saw that not only with the broad communities of America, but also in the African American community, the Hispanic community, and the Asian American community. And these are places that there are statistics that showcase the fact that the economy was great and can be rebuilt under a Trump-Pence administration. And I think, again, the economy is the number one thing that people are going to want to discuss in any election. If you look at any poll, in any conversation, I think that that's something that will always be discussed. When it comes to the support for India and the support for what's happening, especially on the border with Kashmir and a lot of other issues related to China, the president has been one of the strongest voices against China in many different fronts, including in the issue related to India. We've seen the prime minister and the president walk hand in hand, not only in Texas, in Houston at the Howdy Modi rally, but also in Ahmedabad, India. These are images that I honestly was very moved by, even personally. And, I wasn't born in India or anything like that. My parents were, but they were moved by that. And many people in the community were moved by that. And so that's also something that people are very excited to see from what the president has actually done outside of everything else, what he's actually done to showcase his support for the Indian American community. When you look at the campaign, he's created an advisory organization of 19 people, people from all over the country in battleground states, but in other states as well, that are out there actively engaging and supporting what the president's agenda is. You can look up Indian Voices for Trump on the internet. It has an entire website under the umbrella of the DonaldTrump.com campaign website. So it's a very official apparatus. I know that the Democrats have something very similar, so I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that the Republicans have went out of their way to showcase the fact that the Indian American community is important to them. I think on the Democratic side, they still message it specifically more so as South Asian. But in the case of the Republicans, they're very much adamantly messaging it as Indian Americans. And I think that that's something that's very interesting that you got to look at. You got to think about, why is that? Is this a shift in the way that the political arena is going to be moving when we look at the future? I think so. And I think it's great for the community. I think that as somebody that grew up in this country for the last 30 plus years, it's something that I'm excited to see. And I think a lot of people are excited to see. And I think a lot of times, having been to the game for the last 10 years, on mostly the campaign side, but a little bit on Capitol Hill as well, I think that it's something that we always used to say, which is that the Indian American community is where the Jewish American community was 20 years ago. And I think that that's very much different now. I think that timeline has shifted, and we're the new talking point for both parties, and that's exciting to see.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, that's a interesting, summation that you were giving. You mentioned Senator Orrin Hatch. If I may take the liberty, I remember way back in 2001 when we founded the U.S.-India Political Action Committee. One of the outreach mechanisms we did was something which we call as Breakfast on the Hill. And the first senator whom we were able to reach out to and whom we hosted a breakfast discussion was Senator Orrin Hatch. So the US Dolly would very much remember that, I think, because she was very much involved in that phase also. So that's a very interesting reminder. But yes, your point about foreign policy and US-India relations and how Trump has been, yes, these are the issues which are very much out there. Now, may I invite, let's say, one round of closing thoughts from each of our participants. And may I begin with, let's say, Sam. Mr. Shiv, what are your closing comments? And I'll ask you another thing. If you've seen it, sometimes the effectiveness of your policy or messaging or debate is an uptick, because part of the thing is raising funds, right? Both of the candidates or campaigns are trying to raise funds. So have you seen any, sharp rise in the funds to the Harris campaign or the Biden-Harris campaign as a result of last night's debate? I know it's too soon to see, but maybe within 24 hours we'll see, that what has been some, jump in the numbers. And same way, maybe Adi or Barry or some of us look at if there has been any, jump in the fundraising money coming in for the Trump campaign. So that's an overall question. But may I invite your wrap-up thoughts, Sam, on how you think the debate went, what impact, and if you would, of course, if you're a supporter, you will clearly be rooting for and saying, will win. But what is your prognosis going forward?
Okay, I wanted to make a couple of closing comments and kind of address some of the other, excellent comments by my panelists on all different sides. I think one thing that's very important is the Indian American community is very well educated. We have so many doctors and engineers. And if you look at two of the leading journals, for people that are very well educated in the research field to the medical field, you have the New England Journal of Medicine and you have Scientific American. These are scientific journals, research journals, and they don't typically get involved in politics. But, this is the rare instance. I mean, in fact, it's like historic for, like the New England Journal of Medicine, first time where they make a comment, because what's happened is those of us that are Asian American who have college degrees, many of us feel attacked. We feel that being smart, we're under attack by this current administration. And it's not just Asian Americans, it's all Americans with education. They feel like this discard for the experts, for the people who have MDs, for the people of PhDs is preposterous. And, they both taken a stand against Trump. I have a lot of friends who are in the military, and with everything going on, you see all these military leaders, current and, especially the former leaders, speak out against Trump. His distaste for law and order in the military is scary, because we need a strong American military to provide stability in the world. And his lack of respect for the military institutions is something that's very concerning, especially in America where people confuse. I mean, there's a lot of people that confuse an Arab American with South Asian and possibly even Southeast Asian. Hate crimes has not gone away, and hate groups have not gone away. Just because it's post 9/11, there's been an uptick. We've had so many incidents. We've had massacres against Indian Americans, and there's a lot of us that are concerned that this continued vitriol against certain minority groups unfortunately spill over to the South Asian community. It is something that worries so many of us. I mean, we've all heard stories of someone who's South Asian being attacked or being yelled at, or confusing someone who's Sikh for Arab. There's so much confusion in this country, and I get concerned when we have a sitting president that during a debate that does not condone white supremacy, because white supremacists they target us, they target the Jewish Americans, they target African Americans, and and I think Adi mentioned this. In many ways, the Asian American community, there's a lot of parallels with the Jewish American community in the 20th century, and unfortunately, the parallels also involve this hate. The other side uses terms like Antifa, and what's interesting is even the FBI has said there's no such organization. It's a work of fiction. Antifa is a concept. Do you believe, and it stands for anti-fascist? The people that are against Antifa, what they're saying is they support dictatorship and fascism. I would argue that 95% of Americans are Antifa, but they've tried to pull this narrative where Antifa is an organization and not a belief. And it's really scary because there's little roots of xenophobia and racism. I mean, we have issues. We want to make sure, like we have issues with H-1B visas. We need to show that we are an inclusive America. And I think having a vice president who is biracial, who is Black, who is Indian American, will help unite the country and take our country to the next level. And I think it's important that we all do the right thing and we all vote on election day, whether or not we agree with me or agree with someone else, because that's what makes democracy great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sam. Yes, I mean, what you said, I think, all of us on this panel and everyone across America, I think, realizes and engages with these matters. The differences are perhaps in how we think that what road to take to reach those end goals of, a more perfect union, a healing of America, strong economy, strong national security, good relations with India, push back to China and all of that. So the matter is that who would be the commander in chief and his lieutenant to best, take us there, put us there. That being said, now may I invite Barry. Barry, your concluding comments, sir, please.
So, speaking of Kamala Harris, the way I look at it is this: that in the past, I have never heard her claim her ancestry connected with India. I've never heard her taking pride on her being Black. It seems like it's something that's a newly invented strategy that her strategist came up with in the last 2 months, all of a sudden, where she's now trying to take pride in her Indian connection, in her being a Black person and all that. I have not heard any statement from her supporting India in any way at all. I have not heard anything regarding the Chinese-Indian confrontation that's going on right now, saying supporting India in any way at all. Whereas Trump, I think, has been very vocal and very specific in terms of providing support to the Indian position. So I think that she is being more of an opportunist at this time. As to the number of jobs created, it was mentioned that Obama created more jobs than Trump. But I'm looking at it like, listen, if you have a higher unemployment at 10% or so, it's much easier to create the job. When you bring it down to 3.5% unemployment, you don't even want to go anything less than that. That's like superb. That's paradise. So I think he has done a fantastic job in terms of Americans finding jobs and making a living. I think the last comment I have is about the COVID. America has had more deaths compared to the population. Primarily, I think because of the whole American culture, the freedom concept, where you can't herd Americans into a room and say you're going to be locked up there for X number of days. Perhaps you could do that in China much easier than in America. So I think it's the whole concept about everybody wanting to do what they want to do, which is kind of inherent in the American culture. People want to throw parties, people want to go to the beach and things like that, and you can't really start locking them up in the jail for doing that. I think that has been one of the big problems in terms of the higher level of deaths as a result of the COVID. So my support for Trump and Pence is unwavering. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So, in fact, on the Kamala Harris issue on this, I mean, I'm equal, I'm, let's say, independent, you might say. One perspective I had, if I may share it quickly, was that, when she grew up, when she was born in the mid 60s, there were hardly about 15, 20,000 Indian origin folks in the United States, right? So I was just thinking that for the first 30 years of her life, and this is not like a excuse or something, but I teach culture. Okay, I work on cross cultural communication and culture and cultural studies. So looking at the first up till the 90s, there were hardly any Indian American communities out there. So even if you were to be going out, who would be your friends? Probably not many Indian American families around. So that may be one reason I think about the question that you say that she never, owned up to the Indian link earlier. But yeah, politicians take advantage. But that's a slight compromise that up till the 90s, there were no Indian American, communities. You could engage, be having lots of friends and all. So perhaps that may be one reason that she grew herself more into the Black American narrative. But that being said, may I now invite Dolly, Dolly Kapoor, for your concluding remarks about the points which Barry made, absolutely, which Sam made, which Adi has made, Steve has made earlier. So sure. So how and where you think things are going?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. Again, I think Pence and Harris both reflect and resemble their parties' bases better than the presidential candidates do, actually. Pence represents the religious conservative constituency of the GOP and has a background in conservative media, while Harris represents the response to questions being made. She responded to the questions being made, being the standard bearer for a party. I'm talking specifically about the debate yesterday.
Yes,
Now,
please.
um, I seriously think that she really appealed to the people living in basically the suburban voters, and talked really about the Affordable Care Act, which is much popular right now, after Trump took office. So having said that, I seriously think that people have made up their minds. They have made up their minds. Now, as far as the background is concerned, I seriously think we can say that she embraces the Indian ethnicity or not, or, we can question it. But I, as a woman, think it's a history in making. Forget about the ethnicity. If she is a vice president for next 4 years, and as a woman, she has a chance of taking over as a president of this country, we still have a great chance of seeing a woman president in this country, which I think is long overdue. How India-US relations pan out, I honestly think that, both the countries are doing themselves, they're really taking care of their own agendas. I don't think so. When hydrochloroquine was in question, Trump did warn India about, that I'm not your friend if I don't get this much supply, or for that matter, H1 issues going on right now. So both these countries are taking care of their own self, and every country is for itself right now. So expecting too much, how we are like really, really shaking hands and holding hands, I don't think so. Both the countries are really doing that. We are really looking and forcing our own agenda forward. So let's not be delusional about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dolly. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, bottom line in geopolitics is that each nation to itself, absolutely. But the issue is that when your strategic interests can be in alignment, and that brings more synergy definitely and more benefit to each party, more win-win. But bottom line is yes, each man or each country or each to himself or herself. Thank you so much, Ravi, for your thoughts and views. And you made a very interesting point that perhaps both of them, the VP candidates, represent the base better than maybe the presidential candidates as of now. That being said, may I invite Adi for his concluding remarks, and then we'll have Steve, councilman, now with his perspective. Adi, over to you, sir.
Sure. So thank you so much again for having me. Anytime I get contact from Mr. Sanjay Puri, I'm always excited to participate. And this has been a lively discussion, everybody. It's been a great honor to be here and have this conversation. When we look forward to the next 4 years of presidency, a lot of people are looking at different decisions, but particularly let's talk about the Indian American community because that's what we're discussing here mostly. And then I guess broadly the Asian American community. I mentioned earlier that I served as the National Director of Asian Pacific American Engagement at the Republican National Committee headquarters during the midterm election cycle from 2017 to 2019. And that was a great experience. I got to travel the country and talk to people on the ground. And the one thing that I wanted to really mention, and I think, it was kind of mentioned earlier as well, is about the everyday American, the everyday voter, and the everyday Asian American, for that matter. And are they feeling appreciated or are they feeling left out? And interestingly enough, for me, just having been on the ground in all these different capacities, and even currently in Michigan, this is something that was showcased in the conventions prior, I think, too. But it seems to me that the Republican Party is doing a better job of identifying with the everyday American. They're doing a better job of promoting the everyday American in these conventions and showcasing that not only are they a party that is diverse and unique and interesting, but
Adi, maybe your sound,
they're
can other panelists hear what Adi is saying?
connecting with
I cannot.
Middle America.
The sound is not what it used to be.
When you look
Yeah, sound is not
at
what it used to
the
be,
Democratic,
right? Adi,
it's going to come down to how
yeah,
people feel when they enter the ballot boxes.
sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. The sound was a bit choppy. I mean, we'll take last comment from Steve and.
I'm sorry.
No, please carry on. Please carry on. Otherwise, I would given you a couple
Can
of
you hear me
minutes at
now?
the end.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, awesome. Please continue.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
You can?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we can. Hello. Okay. May I invite now Steve? I think we'll come back to you for your audio would be. I mean, there's some issue with the bandwidth at times. Steve, Councilman Rao, your views on the wrap up of this discussion, and you heard from Barry, you heard Sam, you heard Adi. Definitely, so there is a lot happening. Why both the parties are kind of evenly balanced, right? And that is why the battle is so intense. So both the parties, while Adi says that the Republicans have done a better job of connecting to the average or everyday American, there is something. But at the same time, the Biden-Harris campaign or the Democrats are also connecting to the everyday American. That's where you are, where that campaign is. So what are your concluding thoughts on this discussion, please? Steve?
Steve, I think is muted.
Yeah, no. Steve, you're muted maybe, please, sir. Yeah, Steve?
I don't hear Steve either.
Yeah. Steve, are you... Steve, you can just wave if you can hear us. Okay, you hear us? Wave, but we cannot hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, maybe in a minute we'll come back to you. In that case, Councilman Rao yields his time so that we get 30 seconds each with our panelists again. Let's say Sam, Barry, and Dolly, and then we can wrap up. 30 seconds, Sam.
Well, I think this is going to be a historic election. What is amazing is we have an African American and Indian American running for office. It doesn't matter whether the candidate is a Democrat or a Republican, and it's also wonderful to see a woman as one of the candidates. I think this is going to be groundbreaking, and I think we're going to see a higher voter turnout from the Indian American community, regardless of who they vote for. And I am excited, and I am looking forward to the outcome of the election on November 3rd.
Thank you so much. May I welcome now Barry Mehta. Sir, your concluding comments, 30 seconds, wrap up. Any insight you'd like to share or any perspective?
Just one thing that I wanted to mention that relates to the H-1B visa. The Republicans have been criticized about being sort of anti-India in relation to the latest changes in H-1B. But I'm looking at it as a positive thing because what it is resulting into is much higher salaries for the H-1B visa Indian people employed here, because now they're requiring that to make sure that they are paid the same level, wage level as the regular American population. And so to my mind, that's a plus. So my support remains unchanged.
Can you
Thank
guys
you
hear
very
me now?
much, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Steve, you're back with us. So
Yeah.
please, concluding 30 seconds. We've really run over. I mean, I hope the discussion has been good. We've been getting plenty of questions on the chat from the viewers. So the questions I've been asking, many of them are which have come to me as the producer of the show also. But we've really gone over the limit. So I thank you for the time. It seems that you also enjoyed the participation. So 30 seconds each. Steve, Adi, and Dolly, please.
Okay, well, I'll just want to close out real quick. First of all, I don't know what happened, but I want to thank you all for hosting this. And it's been wonderful to have such a diverse group of opinions. And I think that's what American democracy is about. What's interesting is, if I looked at my crystal ball, one thing we haven't talked about is that we very well could have a woman president guaranteed in 4 years, because some are saying that Kamala Harris will most likely be the nominee if Biden does not run again, which is very likely that he will not. And that Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador, the daughter of Indian Americans, could actually be the front runner for the Republican nomination. So you literally would have two women seeking the president of the United States, and one of them is the daughter of immigrants from India, which would be quite fascinating. That's just my prediction, but watch out for Nikki Haley. I think we've all talked about the issues. To answer your question, that I think that first of all, North Carolina is a battleground state. And I think it really exemplifies the map of America. You've got urban areas and you've got rural areas. On every one of these issues we've talked about today, from the pandemic to the economy to whether we have systemic racism, whether we need more social justice, to healthcare, to all of these issues, they're looked at very differently from the urban bases of this country, which are run more by Democratic mayors, Democratic senators, legislators, and the rural areas. So North Carolina is a perfect example of that. We have a Republican General Assembly, but we have a Democratic governor. He won back they lost the supermajority, and now they're trying to get.
If I may request you, we got to wrap up.
Okay.
I'm loving the conversation.
So
yeah.
I'll end with this. For me, I'll just end with a personal, quick 10 seconds. I think I agree with Vice President Biden. It's about possibilities. America could be great by that. And I've lived that in my life where my father-in-law saw Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, an immigrant from Gujarat. He came here with his wife to serve in the U.S. Air Force. And he retired as a colonel and died 2 years ago. I think at the end of the day, we want an America where anybody in the world would want that to happen. And that's why I'm supporting the Vice President and Kamala Harris, because I think they can get the plane back on the trajectory. But I respect Republicans. They're having a healthy debate, and I look forward to Election Day in a few weeks where we'll see the result. And I hope we can accept the results and
Thank
move on
you.
as a country, whoever the 46th president of the United States is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Steve. The points that you wrapped up so beautifully, what America stands for, American values, and the beauty of those. Adi, your concluding 30 seconds, please. If you could.
Sorry, I think I also got cut off earlier, and there were some technical issues, but I'm glad to be back on here and glad to be on in general with everybody. Right now, we're looking at what seems to be one of the closest elections that people have probably experienced in the modern era, and anything could happen. The battleground states on the ground are neck and neck. Both parties are putting in all kinds of resources to try and make sure that they can win over these states. And what's very interesting, going back to my original and earlier point about Middle America, right now the battlegrounds are the Midwestern states. We're talking about Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, places where you're talking about communities that are built in manufacturing, communities that are built on small businesses, communities that are rural, communities that are thinking about what their next 4 years are going to be like. And I do think that moving forward, they're going to reelect our president, and that's what I'm hoping will happen. And I think that there are a lot of different outcomes that could come about, but that's how the map looks to me. But other than that, I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to have a discussion with many of the folks here. And I hope that we can have a conversation after the election's over as well.
Thank you so much, Adi. Thank you so much. Now, I invite Dolly for her wrap-up comments. So these will be the last comments, and after this, we'll be closing the show. I'll just take half a minute of a wrap-up. But Dolly, floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Robinder, for putting this together. Really, really enjoyed my time listening to you guys. Thank you, and meeting you in here. Hopefully, we'll meet in person sometime soon. This country needs to heal. I seriously think that we need next 4 years to heal, to get back to what we stand for. It's very important that whosoever comes for next 4 years, we as people, we really need to forget about which party we support. But we need to understand that we as people need to get together first. The democratic process and the democracy we live in right now, I think we can discuss as much as we want, but people really need to go to the voting booth and vote and make sure that they do not undermine their one vote, because that can make a huge difference, unlike last time what we had. So if we can do that and we can forget about the party and the party divide, I think we do have a chance of bringing US back to some sanity. Very perturbed, very disturbed by whatever is happening in this country. I came to this country 20 years ago and left India. I mean, I was in Africa after that, but in which way, it was sad to see how we had the politics in India always based on religion and caste. But seeing something similar here is not helping. So I really hope that we can get back to our feet and both the president, whosoever comes in, can heal and get this country back to some sanity.
Thank you so much, Dolly. And on that, awesome note, I thank, on behalf of the US India Political Action Committee and on behalf of the India Institute, I genuinely thank each one of our distinguished panelists, Sam, Bharat, Barry, Dolly, Adi, of course, Steve. And I also thank our viewers who've been watching by, coming by. We have plenty of likes, and we see about, X number 21 people are loving, is the love symbol on our Facebook page going. So people, as in a Facebook Live, people come and go, but we've had a pretty good traction. And also for the benefit of our panelists and of our viewers, the recording of this show would be put up on YouTube and once again on our Facebook, and we'll share with our esteemed panelists, and then they can share it again with their friends and family. Uh, as to the very interesting, very special times that we are going through, this really is a unique time. Each generation has its own unique times. Our generation, for us, these are extremely special and very important times. So that being said, hoping for the best, whoever comes, America moves ahead. America brings value to the world, values, and the beacon on top of the hill, be it there. That's what we are, I think, all looking, and the world is watching, of course. And that being said, I once again thank each one of our panelists. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights. And thank you so much for your candid views and opinions. That's the takeaway. These are the conversations. Maybe some of your points would have struck to somebody's mind and would help them see things in a different way. Who knows? With that being said, this broadcast is now over. Thank you so much.
Thank you.